Okay, so it's time for us to finally wrap up our coverage over the Heroes Reborn reality. As you all know, when it came to Marvel Comics in the late 1990s, what they did was they basically tried to give some certain characters a fresh start. You see, in the late 1990s, as we all know, Marvel was struggling and some of their properties were no longer selling. Iron Man, Avengers, Fantastic Four. When it came to Captain America, he was technically selling, but he was also part of that package deal as well. But either way, when it came to Marvel, what they did was they had used Avengers X-Men Onslaught event as a way to push those characters out of the main Marvel universe, but into a different reality, better known as Heroes Reborn, to give those characters a fresh start with old creators that Marvel had brought back. Now, at first, it did seem like everything was going to work out for them, but by the 12th and 13th issue of each series, you did have Marvel say, you know what? Let's go ahead and take those heroes back over to the main Marvel universe. Now, after reading everything about Heroes Reborn, I can officially say that I don't really hate it. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. I felt like it was just okay. For me, the artwork was mostly okay, except for Rob Liefeld's artwork, but hey, that's not really me hating on him. It's just me saying like, maybe, just maybe, I don't have a taste for his artwork. And that's really it. But for me, the biggest issue was the overall storyline. Like at first, all the stories were hitting, but then out of nowhere, they kind of felt like the stories were just all over the place. But at the same time, they were trying their best to connect with one another, and it became a huge mess. Now again, that's just me though. But with the idea of Heroes Reborn, the return, it's nice to see those characters go back into the main Marvel universe. But as we get into the opening pages of Heroes Reborn, The Return, issue number 1, we're really picking up with Reed Richards and Susan Storm. And for me, this makes a lot of sense because these two characters, their son is the reason why they're currently in a different reality at the moment. Because when it came to that Onslaught crossover, you had the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, and a few other heroes besides the X-Men and Spider-Man and a few other characters who were, popular at that time, not go into Onslaught. The one who did, they all went into a different reality. And so for Fantastic Four, they have been living a life in the Heroes Reborn reality like everything is normal. They don't remember their past lives in the main Marvel universe, especially when it comes to their son, Franklin Richards. See, this storyline was the one that established the idea that it was Franklin Richards who had created the Heroes Reborn reality as a way to save his family, but also the other heroes who went into Onslaught to hopefully defeat him. And so to Franklin Richards, he had created the Heroes Reborn reality. The thing is for Franklin, he does not know how to control his abilities. So he did not do it on purpose. It was a complete accident. But for Franklin, he's right now being confronted by Ashema. Now for Ashema, she is this celestial who's right now appearing as a human as a way to communicate with Franklin Richards, to let him know that he does have the ability to bring his family back into this reality, to reach out to them. But the thing is, she also says you have to make a big choice. Now, for this 4-part storyline, that choice is very important when it comes to our heroes coming back into the main Marvel universe. But it's also her kind of hinting at the idea that once he does decide when it comes to that choice, there's a possibility that he might have to leave with her and join the rest of the Celestials. Around this time in Marvel Comics, when it came to Franklin Richards, he was staying with Generation X. Generation X was the 1990s version of the New Mutants, a bunch of kids right now who are trying to learn how to control their abilities, and you had Banshee and also Emma Frost as their teacher. Now, around this time, Marvel Comics, for Franklin, he was classified as a mutant. So for Nathaniel Richards, he decided that his grandson should stay with Generation X. Now, there was a storyline where you had Black Tom attack the school. When he did, you then had Man-Thing being able to grab Franklin and the other members of Generation X. The thing is, for Man-Thing, he saw something going on with Franklin. It's the whole idea that with Man-Thing being like the protector of the nexus of all realities, he kind of saw something special about Franklin and kind of kept him, even though the heroes were able to go back home to their school. But now we have to shift over to Spider-Man. Now for Spider-Man, he really does give us that example of a hero who was still popular in the 1990s and was not really affected by the Onslaught event, meaning that he did not go over to the Heroes Reborn reality. He was able to stay in the main Marvel universe. But for Spider-Man, it's him right now watching the news about the anniversary of when the heroes had disappeared. Of course, they're talking about the Avengers and the Fantastic Four, because for the heroes in the main Marvel universe, they believe the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, they had died when it came to going inside Onslaught, not knowing that Franklin Richards had pushed those characters into a different reality. Now, I kind of want to sit down and talk about the Hulk for a moment. And the reason why, because the Hulk is a special character in his whole event. You see, when it came to Bruce Banner and the Hulk, they took down Onslaught. They were really able to beat down on him. Now, the Hulk did pass out, and so you were kind of left to believe at first that the Hulk would not go into the Heroes Reborn reality, but he did. Well, not him. Bruce Banner did. And so you had the Hulk stay behind, but for Bruce Banner, he went into the Heroes Reborn reality where unfortunately he was turned to Hulk all over again in that reality as well. Now we do pick up with this astronomer who's currently just watching this space anomaly make their way over to Earth. Now for this guy, he has no idea what it is just yet, but unfortunately he's not gonna know because when it does crash land, he's killed off. But we do learn that it is Ashema arriving to Earth as a human or appearing as a human as a way to be able to communicate with Franklin Richards. But as we do switch over to Franklin Richards, we kind of get the idea of how powerful he truly is, because for Franklin Richards, he's holding on to this ball. That ball is the Heroes Reborn reality, and when the ball gets eaten by an alligator, you have Franklin use his powers, technically on accident, to kill off the alligator as a way to get his ball back. The Heroes Reborn reality. Now, this ball begins to show him different images, like for example, images of two different Hulks. The Hulk in the Heroes Reborn reality and the Hulk here in the main Marvel universe. And really, we do get a small glimpse in the other world where you do have Thor and also Ben Grimm fighting against that other Hulk at the moment, the one in the Heroes Reborn reality. But while you have that fight going on, you have Franklin being able to see the fight, but only as small images appear on his ball. And he's very confused with the idea of what's exactly happening. But you did have Franklin be confronted by Ashema. Now for Man-Thing, it wants to protect Franklin, but you have Ashema send Man-Thing running away scared, but also on fire as well. But either way, for Ashema, she came there with a purpose. But with Ashema being there in the main Marvel universe talking to Franklin, it begins to affect the Heroes Reborn reality as well, because we do see the Fantastic Four just trying to have lunch together, or really more breakfast. But either way, for Susan, she begins to cry out of nowhere. And it's not like she's sad or anything, just something about her is happening. And that's the idea that the Heroes Reborn reality is about to change forever. Because as we do switch back over to Franklin Richards, who's still with Ashema, it's Ashema right now explaining everything to Franklin like, hey, listen, I'm a Celestial. I'm a very powerful being. Me and my fellow celestials, we did experiments here on Earth. And of course, it led into you, a creation of a being that has the ability to warp reality, to create life. And that right there is pretty cool and all. But it's also her saying like, let me show you what you did technically on accident. And so she takes Franklin into the Heroes Reborn reality. And with her doing that, it's really more of her saying like, look at what you created. You made this reality. You put your family in this reality. But it's also her saying like, but it has to go. Like, you have an option here. You can say the main Marvel Universe Earth, or you can say this Earth that you had created. And so for Franklin, that right there for a young boy is a big thing to ask. Like, you're asking him to decide which world should go. But technically, his family is in the Heroes Reborn reality. And so to close on the first chapter of the storyline, when we do jump over to Reed and Susan, they're laying in bed, but then they're confronted by Franklin Richards. The problem is that they don't remember Franklin at all, really. But for Susan, she kind of does. And here's the reason why, because when our heroes went into the negative zone, they were also able to get like small glimpses of their actual past over in the main Marvel universe. And so for Susan, she's kind of like, I was in this part of the negative zone where I saw myself, a different version of myself that was able to have kids, and they had a son named Franklin, the boy right now that she's currently seeing. And so of course, she begins to freak out. But now we have to switch over to Doctor Strange. Now, when we do, it's really more of Doctor Strange being confronted by the fake Loki. And the reason why I say the fake Loki, because when it came to Heroes Reborn, most of our heroes were transported into this brand new reality, given new lives in that new reality. But for Thor and Loki, that was not the case. Now, at first, we were kind of left to believe that it was Thor and Loki from the main Marvel universe who were brought into the Heroes Reborn reality at first. But then out of nowhere, you had the real Thor appear. And the real Loki has been hanging out with Doctor Strange in the main Marvel universe. And so we're kind of left to believe that for Franklin Richards, he wasn't really able at first to transport a god into the Heroes Reborn reality. And so what he did was he created fake copies of Loki and Thor in that reality. And so for this Loki, at first, he still somewhat believes that he is the real Loki. But you have Doctor Strange tell him like, nah, like, you are not the real Loki. But while you do have the two characters talking to one another, well, that is when Loki freaks out. And the reason why, because something is coming after Loki in his reality. And that would be Ashema. And the reason why she's there right now killing off the fake Loki is because this fake Loki was, of course, being the god of mischief. He had his own plans, and of course, those plans involved both realities. But for Ashema, she made sure that Loki would not be able to meddle with the plans of the Celestials. But now we're able to work our way over to the Fantastic Four. And when we do, it's all of them right now just looking at Franklin Richards. But the problem is that none of them remember who Franklin is because they were given new lives in this brand new reality. Now, technically for Susan, she somewhat does remember Franklin because she saw him out in the negative zone. She saw that other version of herself, technically her original version. But you do have Franklin try his best to explain everything to the Fantastic Four. The problem is that he does mispronounce Celestials, and so with him doing that, unfortunately for Reed and Sue, they don't truly understand what exactly is going on. But you do have Franklin leave. Now, for Susan, she begs Reed to help out Franklin, to bring home their son. Now we do switch over to Spider-Man. Now for Spider-Man, we're technically going to use him as a way to bring the Hulk back into the picture, but also like the idea of what's happening across the nation. All these different natural disasters just popping up left and right across the nation. And that right there is somewhat important because we're going to see a similar thing happening over in the other reality as well. But now focusing on the Hulk, there's a whole idea that when it comes to the Hulk and him being split with Bruce Banner being in the other reality and also Hulk being in this reality, there's some kind of energy he's putting off at the moment. And really, you have the military stepping in, Hercules stepping in, but also the Thunderbolts. Now, the Thunderbolts were created as a way to kind of, watch over the world with the idea of the Avengers no longer being around. But either way, for the Hulk, it's very concerning because he's putting off some type of energy here at the moment. And while you have the Hulk just popping off in the main Marvel universe, over in the Heroes Reborn reality, the Hulk is once again going on a rampage. And you have you're having Thor trying his best to bring down the Hulk. But then out of nowhere, a bunch of magma just pops right out of the ground. So you have Thor trying his best to protect innocent people. But while doing that, the Heroes Reborn Hulk, Bruce Banner Hulk, just disappears. But while you have that going on for Doctor Strange, he does find Franklin Richards' ball. And with him being able to find the ball, it's now him kind of wondering, like, what should he do with it? Should he possibly bring the ball over to the Hulk? And speaking of Franklin Richards, who's still in the Heroes Reborn reality with Ashema, it's her telling Franklin, like, you gotta make a choice here. Like, you got two options. You can go ahead and save the Heroes Reborn reality, or you can possibly save the main Marvel Universe reality. But you gotta make a choice here. And the thing is, for Ashema, the way she talks about the beings in both realities, they're like ants to her. They're kind of like small, lesser beings who she should technically not care about. But for Franklin, they are still people who have lives. They're still alive, and he hates the idea of her looking at them as lesser beings. Now, you do have this wild animal appear, and when it does, for Franklin, he feels bad about the animal. He asks Ashema to help heal the animal, which she does, but then right after that, she kills off the creature, and that right there ticks off Franklin Richards a lot. But it also shows how powerful he truly is, because with him being upset, he was able to release an attack to kind of send her back a tad bit. And for Ashema, she can't believe that his attack actually did hurt her somewhat. But then she realized he had disappeared. But getting back over to the Fantastic Four over in the main Marvel universe, they're also kind of showing us that things are popping off not just on Earth, but also in space as well, because you have two fireballs just making their way over to the Earth. Now, for Susan, Ben, and Reed, really all the heroes on Earth, they just got done with Galactus. So now you are possibly talking about the idea of some more space problems popping up. But you didn't have our heroes realize that earlier for Franklin, he had mispronounced the idea of the word celestials. And so once you have our heroes understand what he meant by it, they're kind of like, okay, we got some work to do here. Now, getting back over to Peter Parker, you have Peter Parker arrive at the scene where the Hulk is at right now, fighting against Hercules, the military, but also fighting against the Thunderbolts as well. Now, when it comes to Spider-Man, when he does arrive there, he realized that the rain has picked up there where the entire area is being flooded. And you have the Hulk trying his best to keep the water away from him. But as soon as you have Spider-Man being able to land right on the Hulk, you have Doctor Strange fly by. When he flies by, he has that ball in his hand. And of course, that means our two heroes, the Hulk and Spider-Man, are easily transported into the Heroes Reborn reality. But while you have the Hulk and also Spider-Man being transported into the Heroes Reborn reality, is also Ashema telling Franklin, like, if he does not choose when it comes to, which Earth to save, the Celestials will choose for him. And if they choose, then both Earths are going to be completely wiped out. Now, when the Hulk and Spider-Man do arrive in the Heroes Reborn reality, they're then confronted by Bruce Banner, who's currently the Hulk at the moment. And so as we do dive into the third chapter of the storyline, we're really picking up with Ashema looking for Franklin, who was able to get away from her. Except when she does find Franklin, he fell down a cliff. And it does seem like that Franklin Richards is officially dead. But now we have to switch back over to the Fantastic Four. Now, when we do, it's really more of us picking up with the Fantastic Four, really more Reed working with Tony Stark. Now, when it came to Reed Richards in this reality, he knew that Tony Stark was Iron Man. The whole idea of Iron Man being Tony Stark's bodyguard, Reed did not fall for it, but it's really now Reed trying to figure out what exactly is going on when it comes to their Earth. And so for Tony, he brought some rock samples from deep inside the Earth to kind of see how old the Earth truly is. Now for Reed Richards and Tony, they can't find anything abnormal about it just yet. But for Tony, he'll be going into the negative zone to run a few more tests on the rock samples. Now, for Reed, he also tells us, the readers, the two fireballs that's heading over to the Heroes Reborn Earth, they sped up. So at first, they may had a few weeks, but now they only have like a few days before the fireballs do hit the Earth. But now we have to switch back over to the idea of having two Hulks fight against one another. Now, while you do have the two Hulks fighting against one another, you have our Hulk. The one from the main Marvel universe recognized that the other Hulk is Bruce Banner, but in this reality, unfortunately, he had turned to the Hulk once again. Now, for the Hulk, while being in the main Marvel universe, he kind of felt like he was incomplete, that he was missing his other half, but he could not understand why he felt like that. Now he understands why he did, because he didn't have Bruce Banner in his mind with him in the last year. And so now seeing Bruce Banner as the Hulk and kind of realizing what he was supposedly missing is him being happy about the idea of moving on, but also wanting to continue to fight against Bruce Banner, who had hulked out, to see who would technically win, but to also get rid of him. Now, while you do have the two Hulks fall off the bridge and fall into a river, you didn't have Spider-Man be confronted by the Avengers. And really, this is pretty huge because for Spider-Man, he believed that the Avengers were dead, but to see them alive in this other reality, he's kind of like, wait a second, I thought you guys were dead. But as we do switch over to Ashema, it's her right now standing over the dead body of Franklin Richards. Now, you do have the other Celestials tell her, like, you need to bring him back to life, where of course she does go out of her way to bring him back to life. Except when she does that, it's also her now seeing that he is connected to all the different humans on the main Marvel universe Earth. And so when she does touch him, she begins to get a crash course of the whole idea of the human race. And really, it kind of gives her emotions. Like, she begins to understand what it feels like to be a human. And so once she does recover Franklin and he wakes up and asks her, like, can I now go see my mom and dad? She says yes. Now, as we do switch back over to the Hulks, you do have something, or really someone out of nowhere in this aircraft, grab both Hulks and begin to take them away. Now, before we do learn like what exactly is going on, we have to jump back over to the Fantastic Four, because you do have Tony Stark being able to come back from the negative zone. And when he does, the rock samples that he had collected, they basically told him like the Earth is only a year old. And that can't be true because, well, our heroes, they're way older than a year old. And so for our heroes, they begin to freak out. But then they're confronted by Franklin Richards, who has returned to them. Now, as we do switch back over to Spider-Man and also the Avengers and also, well, the Hulks, we do learn it was Dr. Doom who had grabbed the Hulks, because it's Reed Richards saying, I need all hands on deck. Like, I need Dr. Doom here, Tony Stark here, Hank Pym here, Bruce Banner. Like, we need all hands on deck to figure out how to save the world. And so for Dr. Doom, him also telling us that when it comes to the Hulks, that they're leaking some sort of transdimensional energy. So of course, it's the whole idea that you have Bruce and Hulk being the same body, but with Bruce going into the other reality and the Hulk staying behind, you now have the Hulk kind of leaking out that energy. Now, for a brief moment, we do switch over to the sidekicks of Captain America. That'd be Falcon and also Bucky. Now, for those two characters just out there right now trying to handle some business out in the streets. The problem is that you didn't have those two characters look up in the sky. They see something. And so to close on the third chapter of the storyline, you do have Fantastic Four, really all the heroes coming together, and really more Reed kind of catching everybody up with what Ashema had basically explained to the heroes. But here's the thing, because while you do have our heroes trying their best to figure out like what is their next move, they hear all these screams coming outside from the city. When you have our heroes look up in the sky, what they see is Celestial, who has now decided what to do when it comes to Franklin's reality that he had created. So as we dive into the final chapter of the storyline, we're really picking up with the idea of our heroes all gathering at the Baxter building, because now it's time for them to go ahead and just head back over to the main Marvel universe by using the vessel that Dr. Doom had used earlier in this storyline. Now, for Dr. Doom, Reed, Tony Stark, and Bruce Banner, they kind of agree on the idea of working together to find a way to save this reality as well, but also still going back over to the main Marvel universe. But now we have to switch over to Captain America. Now, when we do, is him taking Falcon, because Falcon is the same one we had back in the main Marvel universe. But of course, he now has to go back home to the main Marvel universe. But for Bucky, she can't go. And the reason why, because she was not from the main Marvel universe. She was created in this reality. And so she does not understand why Steve and also Sam get the chance to leave, but she can't go with them. And the thing is, she has built a friendship with Steve Rogers. As we do switch back over to our heroes, is our heroes now telling Ashema like they don't like the idea of the possibility of this world dying. And so it's them saying like, yeah, we'll go back to the main Marvel universe, but at the same time, we want to make sure that this world sticks around. Now, she says no, because again, the Celestial said Franklin has to choose one of the worlds. He chose this one to get rid of, which means that if you guys try to back out of your word, then that means both worlds are going to be destroyed. Now, it's also her informing the heroes that she does plan on taking Franklin right after they do arrive back in the main Marvel universe. But because you do have all the heroes coming together and they all have different personality, but all have the same purpose, the idea of seeing this world survive, for Ashema, she does change her mind. But at the same time, when she looks at Franklin, that really makes her change her mind, seeing him. Because earlier, while she touched him, she was able to get a crash course on what it's like to be a human. And so for Ashema, she's down with the idea of letting this world survive. But either way, the heroes still must go back home. Now, the question is, where is Tony Stark? And for Tony, he has to say goodbye to Pepper Potts, because in this reality, this was not the original Pepper. And technically, we already knew that because, again, she was not there when it came to the big battle against Onslaught. It was Franklin who had created her just for this reality. And so for Tony, it's him saying goodbye, but also him saying like, I love you, but I gotta go. And so this leads into the moment where you do have our heroes begin to make their journey back over to the main Marvel universe. Now we do learn that they have to travel through this reality's version of the negative zone. And the reason why, because there are actual borders at the end of the negative zone. The end borders of the zone is where Franklin Imagination ends. And so once they're able to pass those borders, they'll then be able to go back into the main Marvel universe. Now, for Ashema, she does leave. As a matter of fact, she does get rid of her human form. But while she's leaving, for our heroes, they believe that they're going to make it back there and everything right now is going very smooth. Except that is when Dr. Doom does, well, Dr. Doom things. Because for Doctor Doom, what he wanted to do was siphon off the energy of Franklin Richards. And the reason why? Because then he could use that energy to become a god, to rule over the Heroes Reborn world, but to also go after the Celestials as well. Because he believes with Franklin powers in he should be able to bring down the Celestials if he's able to siphon off the energy of Franklin Richards. Now, you do have Thor get in the way. And with Thor getting in the way, you do have those two heroes kind of get lost in the journey where we don't know truthfully where they go to in the storyline. Now, when it comes to Doctor Doom, he does get transported back into the Heroes Reborn reality. And so with that happening, it does lead into another storyline down the road where he does rule over the Heroes Reborn Earth for a brief moment. But this does kind of lead into the ending of Heroes Reborn Return, because once you do have our heroes being able to get back to their reality, you then have our heroes being able to remember everything they had forgotten about when they left the original Marvel universe. Now, for our heroes, they will kind of end up in different parts of the world. Like, for example, I think Steve Rogers does end up in Tokyo or Japan, or somewhere in Japan. But while you do have Bruce Banner arrive back in this reality alongside with the Hulk, you do have the two characters being able to come back together as one. Now, we also learn here that with Ashema basically being able to save both the realities, she did return into her original celestial form. But unfortunately, she's now in this eternal slumber forever. And so for Bucky and the other people out in the Heroes Reborn reality, they get the chance to see the reality continue on. But for our heroes, they're now back in the main Marvel universe. Now, I'm kind of thinking about the idea of us kind of covering just some stories that took place after Heroes Reborn to kind of see how the heroes try to adjust to the idea of coming back into the main Marvel universe. But with that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. See you next time, guys. Later.